It's 28 days of President Tinubu's presidency, and we're monitoring developments closely in his first 100 days in office. Thank you for joining us on the program. I am Nifebi Oguntoye. Remember, you can join the conversation now on Twitter if you use the hashtag first 100 days and also tag at TVC News NG. Let's begin with updates from the presidency. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has now approved the renaming of 15 of the country's airports from after the former president Muhammadu Buhari, as well as other prominent Nigerians. Let's run through it quickly. Akure Airport is now named after Olumuyiwa Bernard Aliyu. Benin Airport, Oba Kenzua II. Dutse Airport, Mohammed Nuhu Sanusi. And Ebonyi Airport is named after Chuba W. Okadigbo. Gombe Airport is named after Brigadier Zakari May Malari. And in southwest Nigeria, Ibadan Airport is named after Samuel Ladoke Akintola. Ilorin Airport, General Tunde Diagbon. Kaduna Airport, Hassan Usman Kassina. The Maiduguri Airport is now named after former President Muhammadu Buhari. And Makurdi Airport, Joseph Sawan Tarka. Mina Airport, Malam Abubakar Imam. Nasarawa and Usube are named after Sheikh Usman Danfodio and Aphrodite Spieth, respectively. Port Harcourt Airport has Obafemi Awolowo as its new name, and Yola Airport, Lamido Aliyu Mustafa. Also today, the Vice President Kashim Shettima decorated the new Controller General of the Nigeria Customs Service, Adewale Adeniyi, describing his appointment by President Bola Tinubu as a morale booster for officers in this service. The Vice President said this at a brief ceremony witnessed by the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, at the Presidential Villa. He congratulated the new customs boss for bringing professionalism back to the Nigerian Customs Service and rekindling the hope of every customs officer to aspire to reach the pinnacle of his or her profession.
We are going to be professional in our approach. There are a number of partners, stakeholders that we are going to be working with. It's a very onerous task for the customs, but we believe that we will be working alongside other stakeholders, other partners that we have identified who yearn to work with us, who felt that they've not been given enough say in customs matters, customs operations. So we intend to come up with a number of innovations that would help to carry along those stakeholders, those partners. We're going to leverage technology. We're going to try and use those innovative technologies to break new grounds in customs operations.
Well, Customs now has a 7th officer as its Controller General. And there's a lot of buzz about that new development, particularly when you consider that the House of Reps earlier in the year, sponsored a bill to limit the CG appointment to 7 customs officers. Let's speak to our State House correspondent, Femi Akonde, who joins me live from Abuja. Femi, this list of new names of airports have been trending for a couple of days now. Talk to us about what you're hearing about it.
Yes, it was from a memo released by the Ministry of Aviation, having gotten approval from President Bola Tinubu to rename these airports after illustrious citizens of Nigeria, people who have distinguished themselves in service. And you know, it's normal for the federal government at any given time to rename critical national institutions or critical national facilities or monuments after illustrious citizens. One, as a way of immortalizing those that have passed, and also keeping the legacy and also celebrating the achievements of people who have distinguished themselves in service to the country. And this would also give people in different parts of the country a sense of belonging, promoting national inclusion. And this is one of the things that President Bola Tinubu has said that his administration will maintain.
Indeed.
And so that everybody has that sense of belonging. Everyone is carried along. Look at the spread of the the people who have been, of the people who the airports have been named after from different geopolitical zones. Some of them are having served the country in different capacities at different points in time in the country's history. So, we expect, or what we expect in the coming days is for that to take effect. We expect to see the signposts at all of these airports being changed. We expect to see new signposts and a whole lot of sign for billboards and all of that is signifying the names of these new airports as directed by the president.
Indeed. So they say every customs officer can now aspire to the pinnacle of their profession, precisely what the vice president mentioned earlier today. It seems like a new lease of life within that ministry, particularly considering that the former Controller General was a retired colonel, Femi.
Yes, there are a lot of people who are not quite comfortable with bringing somebody from outside the customs service to head that revenue-generating institution of government. We
probably will get back to Femi in the course of this conversation, particularly following up on the trended topic of where Mr. President is at the moment. We'll take a break now and we'll be back with more stories. Don't go away.
Bola Ahmed Tinubu do solemnly swear.
In 28 days, President Tinubu has implemented a few things that have got the nation talking, particularly when you consider the removal of fuel subsidy, the signing of electricity and student loan bills, suspension of the CBN governor, as well as the EFCC boss, to his appointments of special advisors and also a change of baton that we saw with the service chiefs. Reactions continue to trail these initial decisions by the president and how they would turn the tide for the country's economy and also the plight of the Nigerian people. Plus, how soon are we expected to hear from the president as regards his appointment of ministers, and what should he be doing differently in this regard? I'm joined now by former presidential candidate of ADC, Dumebi Kachuku, for more on this development. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so the removal of fuel subsidy and the president's attempt to unify exchange rates are some of the tough decisions he's made in this first few days in office. I'm wondering what your thoughts are as regards this.
Well, I've spoken extensively on subsidy removal. I believe that it's a step in the right direction, with the caveat that it should be more like a subsidy suspension. We need to suspend subsidy till we are able to structure the subsidy properly. A few individuals in our country have taken advantage of the loopholes within that system to abuse the system and harm Nigerians. What the president has done is essentially try to mitigate the bleeding by removing subsidy. But I don't believe Nigeria as a country can afford to totally remove subsidy. So I believe that subsidy should be removed temporarily whilst the president puts in place a better structure that allows us plug all loopholes so that Nigerians can benefit from a God-given resource. On the reforms within the CBN, again, it's a step within the right, a step in the right direction. In the interim, it might seem like Nigerians might suffer. It might seem like the naira might fall, but eventually we will get to a landing that typifies the market, that speaks to the real market as against the artificial market that we've all been dealing with. And when that happens, you will find that there's an influx of new FDI coming into Nigeria. You also find that there are Nigerians who see this place as an investment haven. They know that their dollars will work better for them in Nigeria, so they want to bring their dollars into Nigeria. But one thing I need to say is that whilst we're doing this, the government must work assiduously to ensure that we're doing everything to strengthen the Naira. We must do this with the utmost urgency so that we are not in a situation where we are losing. Dollar is strengthening against the Naira. No, we must strengthen the Naira by exporting more, by domesticating the production of the things we import, by using less imports and using more domesticated, domestically produced products. So I believe the president is working in the right direction. On his appointment so far, I believe by and large he's done well. Obviously, the country is excited by the appointment of the NSA in the person of Nuhu Ribadu, knowing that antecedents, people believe that the fight against insecurity, the fight against corruption, the fight against insurgencies, and the fight against domestic terrorism and banditry will be fought with the vigor that it requires. So many Nigerians are excited about that appointment.
Indeed. And Nigerians are also counting on what they will do differently this time. But the president has also mandated the National Economic Council to come up with government intervention aftermath the removal of fuel subsidy. What are your expectations in this regard, and exactly what do you make of the time frame?
Again, it's one of those things I didn't quite agree with. I felt like it was putting the cart before the horse in removing subsidy and then start discussing the palliatives. The palliatives should have been discussed before the removal of subsidy, but they have done that. We expect that this committee, the Economic Council, that they will do this in the shortest time possible, because the truth is that Nigerians are suffering. We see what's happening in the energy sector now, where the discos are trying to increase their tariffs. Nigerians can ill afford any such increase at this point. So the NEC must do everything within their power to ensure that broad-based palliatives are inputted into the economy as soon as possible. Nigeria can't afford any more delays in that happening. And whatever savings they are getting, as again sending this money to states who mismanage these resources, the federal government should come up with broad-based palliative schemes, social infrastructure that affects all Nigerians, so that Nigerians can feel the effects. And again, I say that what the president must focus on is ensuring that he reintroduces subsidy in the next 3 to 6 months after restructuring the scheme. I don't believe that Nigeria as a nation can afford to do without subsidy. I don't believe it's possible.
We'll see how it plays out, because as we speak right now, it's not even captured, in the 2023 Appropriation Act. But his decision from the removal of fuel subsidy to, his monetary policy seemed to have enjoyed a sense of goodwill from cross-section of Nigerians. But I hear you say that he needs to do something quickly. Just how long more do you think he has to enjoy what seems an understanding from Nigerians?
Well, our president is in what we call the honeymoon phase. So people will give him that leeway, that latitude, say, give him some time. But I tell you what will happen. At the end of this month, people will get their paychecks, and people will realize that by and large, their paychecks will do nothing for them. A week, 2 weeks after this paycheck, they'll realize that all their money is gone into transportation, into food. They realize that they have no money left at all. Then the effect of the subsidy removal will dawn on most Nigerians. And then that is when the grumbling will be at an all-time high. And that is when you might see that anything might lead to a conflagration in our society. So the government really doesn't have a lot of time on their hands. They must act very, very fast to ensure that something is done to mitigate the suffering of Nigerians, especially those at the bottom rung of the ladder.
So unlike the former president who took 6 months to appoint his ministers. There's a law now that limits President Tinubu's decision to 2 months, and you recently did mention that he must urgently set up a government with competent people and avoid the temptation of flooding the new administration with political associates. So a politician yourself, and you understand that the president has the responsibility, according to the Constitution, of appointing a minister per state. But in addition to that, he also has a political responsibility. How easy is this decision for him, given the political considerations he must make?
Well, it's very simple. For me, if I know I need to build a house, right? I know what I want from that house. I'll look for the best hands to build that house for me. If the constitution restricts me to getting 1 mason per state, I'll look for the best mason from that state. Of course, I must consider political considerations that those people who are within my party or affiliated to my party, but I will put Nigeria first before my party's interest, because Nigeria is hemorrhaging at all points. Nigeria is suffering. We are breaking at the seams. So this is not a time for him to appoint political bodies. This is a time for him to appoint minstrels, magicians, people with the magic wand, people who can do something different, people who can think outside the box, people who can make something out of nothing. So it's not a time to put in place people who have been associates of long time or people who, because they are within his party. No, I'm sure within the APC will have competent people. So he should find the very best of people within the party in all spheres, in all sectors.
Exactly the point I was going to make, because advocates of the principle of federal character would say that you can find competence within a region, within a religion, and of course, perhaps within a political association. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, which is why I said he must choose the very best. Whatever tag we give to that, whatever nomenclature we give to it, but they must be the very best. People who are talented, people who are capable, people who have the worldview to lead Nigeria into the next dispensation. He must find those kind of people. But the greatest challenge this president has is redefining our collective charter as Nigerians under the green, white, green of our flag. If you see what happened during and after the elections, you realize that we are not a united people. We are a people under a geopolitical region, but we are not really a people. We are not citizens of a country per se. Our president needs to be the father of modern Nigeria by redefining this charter that we all subscribe to, that brings into being, into birth, a new constitution that speaks to every single Nigerian. This is what this president can do to set a gold standard.
Are you referring to the constitutional review that the Ninth Assembly kickstarted?
Say that again?
I said, are you referring to the constitutional review that the Ninth Assembly kickstarted?
No, I am referring to the Sovereign National Conference we had in times past, to a new constitution, not review of certain sections of the constitution, right?
But that did not work in the past. The National Confab of 2014, some would say, was an effort in futility.
That's the point. So it should not be an effort in futility. It was a coming together of Nigerians from all walks of life. So we can't say it's an effort in futility. This president owes it to himself and to all Nigerians to stitch that document together so that it works for every one of us. We can't keep on wobbling and fumbling in the dark. We know what our issues are. You have a situation now where there are people who believe that because this is an APC government, that for the next 4 years, they have no vested interest in Nigeria.
You know, the interesting thing about this is that you can't work on the Constitution outside the Constitution. So you still have to go through the National Assembly, and then and that process already kick-started. I'm wondering, what's the window of opportunity outside the 10th Assembly to achieve this?
So the National Assembly can adopt the confab report, right? Because it's a parliament within a parliament. So it's up to them. the National Assembly, and it takes a political will. It takes a president pushing for this to happen in a very, very short time. It's all about understanding what Nigeria needs at this point. We know what our problems are. And if we keep on papering over our problems, we are going to come to a situation where Nigeria comes to a head and we have no other choices before us at that point. So the president must do this immediately. It's not something he must start delaying. You're already seeing what's happening when you are seeing certain sections of the country talking about Nnamdi Kanu and what have you. You see people still agitating. You are seeing the issues in Southern Kaduna. You might not have noticed, but you see, since the elections, are you seeing the number of people who have been killed in the Northeast and the Northwest? You are seeing the happenings we're having in North Central, farmer header clashes on the increase.
Indeed.
Do you understand? So we have all these issues, and the president has a lot on his table. But a lot of these things will be solved with a constitution that reflects the hopes and aspirations of all Nigerians.
All right, we have to go now, but you mentioned Nnamdi Kanu, and the president seems to be under enormous pressure, to have him released outside the conditions of the court. We've heard the Anambra State governor saying he's ready to stand as surety for his release. How would you advise the president moving forward?
Well, I'll say to the president, he should let the legal process take its course. Whatever the judges adjudicate, if they say release him, release him. Whatever they say, comply with the order of the court as against what the previous government did. Okay? Because we don't want a situation where those who are aggrieved also, there are those who are aggrieved who believe that they are victims of Nnamdi Kanu or his associates, right? So it's important that the legal process takes its course. We must not be seen to have a political solution outside the legal process, so that it's in the best interest of Nnamdi Kanu and everyone for the judges to properly dispense of this matter. That's what's in the best interest of everyone. So if the judges say release him, like they said before, release him. If you want to appeal, you can appeal, right? But once they rule, obey their ruling. That's what I think is in the best interest of everyone.
We'll see how it goes from here and what his decisions will be in the coming days. From our presidential candidate of the ADC, Tinubu Kachiku, thank you so much for talking to us on the program this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's our show. First 100 days continue tomorrow at 5 p.m., but you can watch a repeat of this broadcast at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. See you again at the top of the hour.